The JFrog Platform Overview, the Secure Software Supply Chain Platform. So in the previous segments, we talked about the importance of discovery. We also talked about who JFrog is as a company. And in the subsequent videos after this, we'll be going into detailed analysis of what the various core components of the platform are. But first, you need to understand the names of the pieces and the form and the function that they represent. So this is actually a generalized diagram that we supply to you as part of the deck on who JFrog is, so you can talk to your customers. And I'm going to walk you through the various boxes that you see here. So of course, we're going to start off with the first one, Artifactory. It's the Universal Binary Repository Manager, as stated in the introduction to JFrog itself. This is where it started in 2008 and where we are now. The idea is simple. When it was designed and created, it was a place to store the builds that companies produce and to maintain and manage the third-party transitive dependencies that are utilized by the software companies to build the software that they build. So Artifactory itself is, like I said, the Universal Binary Repository Manager. It acts as a lazy proxy to proxy the requests from software developer or developer tools for the third-party transitive dependencies, direct and indirect, and caches them. This provides a layer of consistency to software development organizations. So if you have a team of 1,000 people in the software development organization, and say developer 0 brings down a library and all the transitive dependencies associated to that, it means 999 other developers will utilize the same binaries or the same transitive dependencies for their software. And when they go in and instead they use a CI tool, it goes in and uses the same binaries. It layers a layer of consistency to the development process. It also, too, is a place to store the builds that are created. We support over 32 package types. You can go to our website and see all the package types that we support, or actually look in the product when you say create a repository. We list out all the repository types that are there, and allows companies to publish the software they produce and associate the transitive dependencies to them. So when you look at a piece of software, you understand all the key ingredients and components that made it up. In addition to that is also a massive metadata repository. I always encourage companies to utilize our API to associate more metadata to make every binary or every library or a third-party transitive dependency or a piece of software they produce to make it more relevant to them. It's searchable, it's queryable. It's also built for everything from single, small companies up to huge, large-scale enterprises, global enterprises that allow companies to, have locations all over the globe, and has replication, which we'll talk about later on. So you can do things like star-based replication or mess-based replication. You can have high availability where, you increase the number of servers you have to increase demand on any software that is being developed. It integrates into SSO. So there's all single sign-on kind of ideas of like SAML-based or OAuth-based and things like that. There's APIs and there's the JFrog CLI. So it's a very, very robust piece of software, but it's the core. It's the cornerstone of JFrog, where it started and where we center everything around. Now, of course, storing those third-party transitive dependencies adds a layer of consistency. Storing the builds allows a way to do auditability, traceability, accountability behind the software that's produced. But of course, not everything in the world is safe. So we have JFrog security. When we dive into security later on, you'll find out all the various aspects behind who we are, because JFrog is a CNA, just so you're aware. We're a CV number authority, which means we have a massive research team that's doing this. We have a huge research team also, too, in terms of R&D for building the product itself. But there's various aspects of it. So we have JFrog X-Ray, which is a symbiotic relationship between Artifactory and X-Ray. You'll find out later on that we use a thing called a checksum-based approach with the storage in Artifactory. So it's all about speed, efficiency, and reducing what's stored, but at the same time, everything's queryable. But the reason why I bring this up is X-Ray itself is a way for you to go ahead and look at things like CVEs, right? Understanding if there's any vulnerabilities or exposures to the third-party transitive dependencies that you're using. Also, too, things things like license compliance. You can go ahead and write rule sets to say you allow or disallow specific licenses, or also too as an indicator of things like typo squatting or binary spoofing. It also includes another portion of this called operational risk. How old or outdated are the libraries you're using to build the software? And can you build rules around that to say, I only want to use software, libraries that are no older than 6 months, or I want to make sure that the third-party transitive dependencies are still being maintained, or has they been completely abandoned? I go into a detailed analysis later on in the instructions. But X-Ray's biggest thing is it's continuous, where other software tools that do security around software development are point solutions where you have to enact some sort of action to get back some sort of results to figure out what you can do or get some sort of direction. JFrog and Artifactory, their symbiotic relationship means that they're continuously scanning, continuously evaluating. So if there is a new, say, 0 day, you can actually go ahead and get a notification about that. Or if, say, a library is, changed in terms of its CVE or CVS score, things like that. Or did the license change? You can be notified if they changed the license because next time you bring it in, it might be different. It may not be on the approved list. But with X-Ray, it can be integrated throughout. Now, this also, by the way, everything I talk about security can be done through an API, also through our JFrog CLI. Later on, you'll also learn that we have our ID plugins that also do this. But the big thing is JFrog X-Ray is SCA. It's software composition analysis. It analyzes those third-party transitive dependencies, which, by the way, are the biggest threat to your company, not only in terms of financial, but also in terms of reputation. And this means that when you are evaluating these things with X-Ray, it is your frontline defense. It can pre-evaluate libraries as they come in and as they're being ingested, and they can evaluate it before they get into your developer or toolset's hands. And on top of that, we also layer in a lot of information about that through the actual UI. Also, too, it's available in our Frogbot, which is we'll talk about later on, which is how you can look at source code and other things too. But software composition analysis is the main core component. We recognize that that's not just the only place that companies need this. And also, too, the sheer volume of CVEs that we see these days, so there has been a 650% increase in supply chain attacks year over year. It keeps going. It's not the supply chain attacks is not decreasing. We introduced advanced security. Later on, when we talk about advanced security, this brings a lot of extra pieces to the security puzzle. Number one, we have a thing called contextual analysis. With the sudden deluge of CVEs that companies have, how do you delineate through them to find out what's most important to you? Well, contextual analysis takes that information into account, looks how it's being utilized, and lets you know, is a CVE applicable or not applicable? This reduces the amount of time and effort that it takes a company to go ahead and actually focus on the security issues that are at hand. But we also find things like secret detection. You'd be absolutely surprised how many things out there, like Docker images. We found, we scanned millions of images with our product from Docker Hub, and we found out that about 80% of those had some sort of secret, whether it's an API key, an access token, or other. On top of that, we also do application and service level exposures. Is the actual service being configured correctly? Like if you're using Nginx, did you remember to enforce TLS or things like that? When we come to services, are there any rogue services that might be running in the background or services that are not configured correctly? Now that handles things that are inside your organization. But what if you wanted to put up, say, a firewall of some sort to go ahead and pre-evaluate or pre-block things that come in your organization? Well, that's where we have JFrog Curation and JFrog Catalog. JFrog Curation is like a firewall for your organization where you can write rule sets around things like vulnerabilities, certain levels of vulnerability. Don't let anything in that's critical, or CVS a score of a certain value. You can also do things on license compliance. Are these licensing components, do they meet your criteria? If not, block them. Or is the software you're bringing in old or outdated? The same idea, but it's more of a frontline defense. Where JFrog Curation is like a firewall for organizations, JFrog X-Ray and Advanced Security is what's inside. Now, once it's inside, these also integrate into your CI process, your CD process. It could be shift left with the IDE or JFrog CLI. It could evaluate things as part of your source code too. It is a complete overall security solution. And early on, I explained that the platform also was, we had a Forrester report done on us where you can get a 393% ROI with our solution promotion within 6 months because of pieces of technology, especially around software development and software security with X-Ray and Artifactory. Most companies, these fill most of the needs that they have, but we have other core components too. We also have distribution and connect. This is where you start getting your software to where it needs to be, whether you're delivering software to your end customers, or whether say you're deploying web services into, say, Kubernetes, where you can have edge nodes, and what we have is a distribution hub, and we have things called edge nodes. Edge nodes are like lightweight, immutable versions of Artifactory that are they're read only, so you can publish your software for consumption. Like I said, like a web service. JFrog Connect is our IoT platform. So when we talk about distribution, it's a hub and spoke model. Distribution is the core component about this, and we go into a detailed analysis later on in the education portion of this. But what it does is you have the centralized hub, and then you have the edge nodes. You use a thing called a release bundle. A release bundle is a way for you to have a software accountability around, say, more complicated software development, like a web service, where it does have Docker images, it has Terraform templates, and maybe something for configuration like Helm, right, when you're deploying it. And the thing is this allows you to package them together in a thing called a release bundle. It's actually immutable, it's digitally signed, and it's distributed. But when it's distributed to the edge, the binary type, or in other words, like if it's Docker, it'll be pushed to a Docker repo. If it's a Helm chart, it'll be in a Helm repo. If it's, say, something like Terraform, it'll be a Terraform repo. It's a way to have accountability and increase the speed and efficiency of deploying out. These edge nodes can also be utilized to deploy software to your customers, whether they're downloading software for consumption. They can also go ahead and distribute software to other locations. So there's more details on this in the distribution section, but that's the main piece behind it. It could also be air-gapped, where you can actually have an air-gapped edge node somewhere, and then you can actually create a release bundle, put it on a USB key, bring it somewhere, and it's like having, like I said, a read-only version of Artifactory. Also, too, because JFrog, when we talk about the complete platform, which this is here, when we start getting into the higher level with distribution, which is part of our Enterprise Plus platform, one of the things we have is Access Federation. Access Federation is a centralized method for you to go ahead and actually enact ACLs, access controls, at the edge nodes. So your customers, they can go in and download only the software that's applicable to them. It's not a blanketed thing. It has the highest security. But like I said, we dive into that later on in the education here. And then JFrog Connect is our IoT platform. It's for software updates, remote device management. You can do things like retrieve logs. You can go ahead and even directly SSH into the devices. It's highly secure. The client that it uses is constantly calling home. And the thing is, it's extremely efficient, extremely effective, and it integrates completely into the software development lifecycle. But when it comes to this, and this means that you can have Artifactory build the software, X-Ray make sure the security is in place, and then you can use the IoT portion, JFrog Connect, to go ahead and distribute it to the devices, maintain and monitor them as you go, including things like security. So understanding that, you now have a way for that end-to-end SDLC. Now, this last part is called JFrog Pipelines. JFrog Pipelines are a CI, CD, and CI orchestration tool, meaning that it can be used as a CI, or it can be used to extend a current CI process. And what that means is when we talk about JFrog Pipelines later on, you can actually use JFrog Pipelines as an endpoint for an existing CI to extend it, or maybe do things like UAT, where you might write some scripts or whatever to test what you're doing, or automated QAing. It could also be used in conjunction with our distribution platform for doing things like software distribution, right? CD, continuous delivery. And this means that our pipelines product is, number one, first of all, it's templatizable. So you can make templates. So if you do create standards around how your software is built, you can create a library of templates that they can use that adheres to a specific standard. On top of that, too, you can also integrate other things. And so instead of having plugins like some other CI tools that are out there, we have native plugins, meaning you can use full API access. It's also built for scale. And what's nice is, It actually uses Kubernetes for the runtime in this case, and uses Docker runners to actually execute the software. So what's nice about that is that you can overload, you put all the tool sets you want into these runners to run the way you want. So it is Kubernetes that's built for scale. And that means that you can have it more geared and akin to what your organization needs. So it's highly customizable. And then, like I said, then you can even use it to create things like release bundles for distribution or anything. It's actually extremely robust, fully resilient CI and CD, or CI orchestration also. And we'll go into that when we talk about pipelines. But this is also another part of the platform. So when we come back to the platform, we have a series of things that we talked about, right? We talked about the entirety of the platform. Now, the entirety of the platform here would be more akin to something like Enterprise Plus. But remember, JFrog Artifactory, Universal Binary Repository Manager, Build Manager, promotion tools, another thing too, be able to promote your software through the SDLC, managing those third-party transitive dependencies. JFrog Security, your frontline defense, everything from shift left. By the way, we also are introducing runtime, which I didn't get a chance to talk about, but we'll talk about later on in the security portion. But continuous active security from a company that is a CNA, a CVE number authority. We know what we're talking about. But before it gets, the pre-evaluation with curation, before it gets in your organization, continuous security with X-Ray, enhanced security with JFrog Advanced Security, with things, like I said, contextual analysis that can really improve the way companies operate and do what they do. JFrog distribution, a way for companies to get their software where it needs to be, whether it's a web service, whether it's their customers, or whatever. And then on top of that, we have our IoT portion, which is JFrog Connect, device management, device updates, diagnostics, security. And lastly, JFrog Pipelines, CI, CD, and CR orchestration. Thank you so much for your time. Enjoy your day.